So now that we're recording, my name is Dana and I've been helping out with the global community. I'm originally with the continuing studies parts of UVic. So I usually work with all of the English language students and the international students over there. I get to help out with the fun events for the global community right now. And I will just introduce that we have a few more staff members here with us, and I will let Sarah introduce herself to start with.
Thanks, Dana. Hi, everyone. My name is Sarah, and I'm one of the Global Community Advisors with International Student Services. And yeah, I look forward to connecting with you all today. And I will pass it over to Cecilia to say hi.
Hi, everyone. I'm Cecilia, the other Global Community Advisor, and it's always such a pleasure to be with you. And I always love sharing about Canadian culture with all of you because I always find I get to learn so much from you about the cultures where you're coming from. And I will pass it over to Swapnil.
Hello, everyone. My name is Swapnil. It's great to see some familiar faces, and hello to all the new faces around. I'm one of the student staff that's just helping out with the orientation, and I hope you guys have a good start to your life at UVic. I'll pass it on to Isaac.
Hi, everybody. My name is Isaac, and likewise, it's good to see some familiar faces and names. So hold on just one second. Sorry, and yeah, this is going to be a great topic, and I'm excited to talk about this. Thanks.
Okay, great. Thanks, guys. So for this session, we're going to end up starting with a little breakout room so that we can get to know each other. And then the next parts of the session, we'll just kind of share our ideas and what's happened during that. And then for the end of it, we're going to do a quiz. So just remember your Canadian culture and what things you come up with, and that we're going to have a quiz for prizes near the end of it as well. And then we can talk a little bit about culture shock and just experiencing different cultures. So to start, we're going to let you guys get to know each other a little bit more in smaller breakout rooms, and we'll be joining you in there as well. And I think we will be posting these topic questions into the chat that you can refer to when you're in your breakout rooms. And we'll just give you about 15 minutes to go over it before we pull you back to the main room again to chat about our answers. Okay, does anyone have any questions or anything to say before we go into the different rooms? Okay, and otherwise I will let Cecilia place us into smaller rooms.
All right, so I am going to be sending you off here. Okay, I think everyone's back now. Dana, if you want to take the lead there when you're ready.
Sorry, this wouldn't let me unmute myself for a bit there.
Oh, no.
Okay, I'll just reshare again. There we go. You guys can see the screen again? Perfect. Okay, so I hope that the breakout rooms went well. If anyone wants to share any highlights that you had in your breakout rooms, maybe anything that really stood out about experiencing a different culture, or of what you think Canadian culture would be like, feel free to jump in and unmute yourself and share. Or if anyone has any stories of if they've been to Canada for the first time or been to a different country or culture for the first time, and what kind of stood out as a shock or something you didn't really expect to happen. That's a cultural difference that came up.
In my room, we were talking about some of the things that we associated with Canada, be like maple trees and whales, people being kind, bike lanes, lots of bike lanes, which is a true association. It's really bike friendly around here. And for me, in my experience with volunteering with international students for the past couple of years, the number one most common thing that they tell me about what's a cultural shock is how everyone has to say goodbye to the bus driver when they get off. And as far as we can tell, this is like an island only thing. Once you get to Vancouver, maybe because it's a bigger city, but people stop that tradition. But it's a nice little tradition. I think it's, sometimes I ask myself, why am I doing this? I don't think they even heard me, but yeah, it's not bad. So.
I just want to add to that, it's a thing to say goodbye to the bus driver in the UK too, and I didn't realise that wasn't like a global thing.
Okay, maybe we got it from all of you.
I was gonna say that's actually very possible because there's a lot of like UK roots in Victoria, so that is very possible.
Mm-hmm. We even have the double-decker buses here. Yeah, that's a good point. Like even coming from different areas in Canada, that was still a difference coming to the island of Victoria with the saying thank you on the buses. So even across Canada, there's a different culture for things too. Does anyone else have anything that stands out? And it doesn't have to be coming to Canada, it can be other countries as well.
In our room, we talked a lot about Indigenous culture because it's I would say most people when they come to Canada they don't talk about that. They don't even know that, and I think UVic did a great job talking to people about that. So we were just asking about how does it work here in Victoria and BC, and it was really cool.
Yeah, I think that's great. That's a great point. And there's definitely a lot to learn about the different Indigenous cultures across Canada as well. I think UVic's getting better and better at introducing that to our curriculum as well, and just talking about it more. Okay, any other highlights? I think ours talked a lot about food and greetings. Those are always big ones for new countries and cultures, and just even the initial greetings of getting to somewhere and what you do for like hugging, kissing, waving, what's natural with friends or strangers. And it might be easier now if it's COVID and you don't have as many options though.
Yeah.
I always find greetings to be so interesting. I think a lot of this actually really varies depending on whether you are in sort of like western parts of Canada versus eastern parts of Canada or more central parts of Canada, or whether you're in like French speaking culture in Canada or English speaking culture. So I have grown up on the West Coast, which there's a lot of English speaking culture here, and we often we like a lot of personal space. And so something that I've noticed like interacting, and I'm gonna call out Brazilian culture for here, because this has, I think, been the culture that was the most stark comparison to like what I was brought up with. So I was always brought up with lots of like spaces required, and like if you're meeting someone for the first time you shake their hand, but that's usually the only contact that you have with them. And then the first time that I went and I met someone from Brazil, they like immediately embraced me in a hug and had like they had like, I think it was 3 kisses back and forth. And my like Canadian English side was like, I was totally frozen and I had no idea how to respond. And I ended up like awkwardly, like kind of missing their kisses. And so that was something that like became very apparent to me, like what I was brought up with versus like other cultures. And I think that's really true for space in general, and like particularly English speaking Canadian places. Tends to be like very important. So you'll find on like buses, people won't sit beside other people unless they have to. Or sometimes if you're like sitting beside somebody and then there's an extra space that opens up, they'll like move over, and it's not meant to be rude. It's just like we love our personal space. That's something that I've really noticed.
That was a big problem for me. Once I got here, I didn't know that people they don't embrace themselves when they're meeting each other. So yeah, totally true about Brazil. That.
Yeah, definitely.
Are you from Brazil?
Yes.
Oh, I didn't even mean to call you out specifically.
It's just one kiss that I do, but some people do 3. Yeah.
Yeah. That's so funny. I didn't even mean to say that specifically about you. It was more so like a general, my encounters with Brazilians has been like, oh my gosh, they touch a lot in comparison to like what I was brought up with.
Mm-hmm.
And you're rude if you don't do that, like Brazil.
That's crazy.
Our culture is like also Brazilians. In Iran also we kiss 3 times, and I don't like it a lot, and I appreciate that the COVID makes people not to do that.
One thing that we kind of talked about, like I guess in addition to what Isaac said, is about how Canadians are very nice, and I guess I can definitely vouch for that. And I think a lot of you people who might be coming to Canada eventually, I'll just let you know that it's a lot easier to kind of get settled because of how nice people are, but also sometimes very interesting. Like in my first year here, I guess I get to know, like when I first came to Canada, like got to know my friends in residence, and yeah, they're really nice. That one of them actually, they also tend to apologize a lot, so one of them actually apologized for apologizing too much, which is an actual thing. So yeah, just as a heads up.
Yeah, a few highlights from my group was, yeah, we also kind of touched on what Swapnil was just saying about Canadians being really polite and kind. We also talked a little bit about food and poutine being a popular dish in Canada. And then something else that came up was language. And I kind of spoke about how it's a bit of a misconception that, so although we are a bilingual country, I would not say that most Canadians are fully bilingual. We definitely learn French in school, and maybe Dana and Cecilia can attest to that too. I mean, I myself, I would say conversational French because I went to a French immersion school growing up. But I would say that the French that we typically learn in school is probably not enough to make us fully bilingual. And then we just kind of shared as well in some of the other countries and cultures that we were from, some of the other languages that we all speak. So yeah, so that was really interesting.
Yep, I'd say that's accurate as well. I just learned a bit of French. It did not stick. There's nowhere to practice it, especially I think on the West Coast here too. Not many people are able to speak French very well. And I know when I travel, a lot of people I meet are like, oh, so you know French, you're Canadian, you must be bilingual. I think most of Canada is not, unfortunately. It would have been nice. Even though I have a French name and my family's from Quebec, I still don't speak French. Okay. Yeah, I think talking about culture is just always so much fun because I feel like you're always learning. There's just always more to learn about with every different country that you go to and different part of the country and everything. And then Also just to see how much actually comes up for doing school online, since most people won't actually be here right now. It'll come up eventually once you actually make it to Victoria in Canada, but just to see if there's anything different for also doing class online, like whether it's how you interact with your professors, classmates, how you address people through emails, just what you talk about. So just, I'm curious to see what comes up with people over this next term. Okay, so I think we're going to do a quiz right now. And this will be for prizes at the end for whichever group gets the most answers correct. And then if it's a tie between some groups, it's whichever one gives us the answers first back that are all correct. So when we put you back into the same breakout rooms again, possibly minus the staff members and volunteers, we won't be helping you with this one. So the first thing you're going to do is have to choose a team name for your breakout room. And we will put 10 questions in the chat for you. So you can check the chat for the questions and the layout of how we want them answered. And then when you come back to the main room, you can send the answers with your team name as quickly as possible in a private message to Swapnil. So Swapnil wants to wave there. So he's going to be one doing all the marking to see who gets them correct. And I think if you finish early and you want to join the main room, you can figure out how to leave your little breakout rooms as well, and you can come back early if you're finished, or you can decide to stay and just chat until the end of the time. Did I miss anything? I think anyone
I'm
else
just going to post the answer template to make it easier for me to get everyone's answers. So if you could kind of use kind of that template, that would be very nice. And if only one person in a team sends me the answers, that will also be great. It makes my life easier.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so just one person with your team name and the correct answers and the numbers.
Should I post the questions now?
Yep. So we'll just post the questions in the chat.
So Sarah's going to post the questions, and I'm actually going to give you guys only 9 minutes to do this because there's quite large breakout rooms. So I think you can split up the questions to answer. So you guys are going to have a shorter time frame.
Uh-oh, she's giving you tips for how to answer quickly.
All right, you guys are going into your breakout rooms now.
Okay, good luck. And while Swapnil tallies everything up to know who wins, I'm just gonna continue to talk a little bit and we'll share some insights about culture shock. Okay. And then he'll let us know when he comes up with the winning team and answers. So something that goes along with experiencing cultures, and I'm not sure how much culture shock people will experience this year, but it can still happen a bit, especially with being isolated and you don't have the same kind of resources and immersions that you're used to. But usually culture shock is the process of adjusting to a new culture, and it might just come up in different ways you don't really expect it to, like feeling more emotional, tired, frustrated, or not knowing why you feel disoriented and you can't really get a hold of things as much as possible, just because doing simple things like sending an email, greeting people, for maybe online things, meeting up with conversation partners, timing, if people are early or late, or go overtime, just everything can just be a little bit different than what you're used to. And of course, when you do actually come to Canada, or if you are here, there's going to be a lot more that might come up as well. So like trying to take the bus or getting around town, meeting new people. So just being aware that it's not necessarily you and all on you for feeling more depressed or disoriented and a little confused. It's just a natural thing that happens to pretty much everyone. And then we also get reverse culture shock sometimes when we go home as well. So it's just kind of something that we just learn to keep experiencing over and over again the more you experience new cultures. So usually there's the same kind of stages of culture shock. We'll see if it happens online as well, but when you're going to a new place, you kind of like, it usually be like you're nervous before you go, and once you get there, you're kind of in a honeymoon period where everything is new and exciting, and you're kind of just excited to try new food, meet new people, figure out your way around everything, and take pictures of everything, kind of go through that tourist phase, and just be really excited about being there. And then once you're there for a while, sometimes you start to be like, oh, so this is kind of what it's like now. I'm still confused, still trying to figure things out, and things aren't quite working. Or you're getting tired of the food, or you just kind of want some home comforts every once in a while, missing some home cooking or family or friends, or just your own language maybe, especially in a new place with a new language, and always having to kind of think in a different mindset. And sometimes that can be very exhausting, just always having to think about and manage new things and think in a new language and be doing school and coursework, and it can just be tiring and draining and leave you a little upset about the situation or frustrated. But usually after that, we might tend to like get a little bit more settled and start to feel better once you start figuring out your way around. And usually people like the global community, and there's lots of resources at UVic, online and in person, to kind of help you find your way around, find your hobbies and exercises that you like to do, find ways to meet new people and do events, and kind of just bring you back up to that comfortable, happy place, so that you really enjoy your time at UVic or enjoy your time in a new area. And then for heading home afterwards, so whatever that looks like in the next couple of years for coming and going, people might get sad before they leave, but then once you get home, it can be nice to also just have your favorite foods again and see everyone and be welcomed back as well. And one of the main things with that is making sure that you keep in touch with people that you meet online or in person in Canada or new places, and kind of try to take a bit of that back home with you, so it doesn't feel like you're just going right back into your old life again. So whether that's like food that you've learned to cook, sharing photos and stories, keeping chat groups going and people on Facebook, and little meetups and conversation partners and stuff like that, just so you can have a little bit of both worlds, might help with merging that. Does anyone else have anything to add to that?
I can talk a little bit later, but why don't you finish going through these slides? I've got a couple of sort of examples that I can share with people about that.
Good. So yeah, a bit about going through culture shock. It's just a whole mix of emotions. So you're kind of excited, tired, confused all at once, and you're just trying to sort out what's going on with how you're feeling. And I think a lot of the time people don't realize what's going on, and that it can be a hard transition. You kind of just put blame on yourself. So it's just being able to recognize that, work through it, and be like very forgiving of yourself to kind of give you time to adjust and figure everything out. So just being able to feel free to research the new culture, ask questions to people who are available and around you, and other classmates. You can also start like a journal to kind of let your thoughts out, or a blog about your travels, and a place to share your photos. Look at what you're looking forward to for things you can do, foods to try, things you can try cooking. And then just remember your self-care activities. That could be meeting new people, being social, remembering to have your basics if you usually do yoga and have tea in the mornings at home, maybe just try to keep doing that while you're doing school or in a new culture, and finding ways to kind of bring your usual self-care that you like to practice into your current days while you're at school and in a new place, just to like make sure that you can balance yourself out a little bit. So yeah, if Cecilia wants to share, or anyone wants to share a couple extra tips about transitioning through this, or any stories. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so something that I wanted to sort of share about an experience that I've heard a lot of people tell me as they have encountered Canadian culture, because I've actually heard quite a few of you say as at the beginning that like Canadians are really friendly and polite. Some people have told me that Canadians are really like bubbly, and sort of like they're very friendly. But one thing that I've been told, and this is really from people that are starting to sort of experience that culture shock, is that Canadians can also appear quite cold or superficial to other cultures. And the reason that they say this is that they say like Canadians are really friendly, but then they're not very good at being friends with people. And the reason why I think this happens, so I'm Canadian, I've grown up in BC. So one of the reasons that this happens, I think, is that I'm someone who is very friendly to a lot of different people. But then when it comes to really like personal matters, I don't tell very many people those personal things. So I'm someone who's like very private. And I think a lot of Canadians are like that. They are like very on the outside. They're very friendly to strangers that they meet. But then there are very few people that get inside to that sort of like a pit. So I've actually heard people compare Canadians and sometimes Americans to like a peach. So if you've had a peach, it's like really soft on the outside, but then on the inside, there's this really hard pit. And only a very few people can actually like access that like hard pit. And so what happens when we're engaging with people is we can get into like really long, lengthy conversations and share a lot of information with people that we meet on the bus or on the plane. And then at the end of the day, we just like go on our way and we're okay like not ever really talking to that person again. And I think where this differs is that I've experienced there's a lot of cultures that like don't really interact with everybody that they meet in quite the same way. They're maybe like polite or they're friendly, but they're not as friendly and like open. But what the difference is like with some of those cultures is that they are so like people have compared these cultures to like maybe more like coconuts. So like they're harder on the outside, so it's harder to sort of like get into that culture or to get into like getting to know those people. But then once you're into the coconut, it's like super soft and like delicious. But when you get to know those people, they open up and they're like you're sort of there for life, like you're friends for life, and there's a really strong connection. And so something that I've heard from a lot of students that have started experiencing Canadian culture, particularly those that are coming from cultures that are maybe like harder to get to know someone, but then once you do, you're like friends for life. It's hard for them because they see Canadians as being really like superficial and not wanting to engage or not wanting to be friends. And that can be really hard for people as they're like engaging with Canadians, because they start to sort of have these like negative feelings towards the people that they're interacting. And the Canadians, they're just being like friendly, and it takes a while to actually get to know them. So one of like my suggestions is to kind of like don't take offense if somebody is doing that. Just keep following up and like asking if you want to hang out with them. Feel free to like hang out, connect. Canadians aren't going to like dislike that. They're just going to they don't necessarily engage in quite the same way. And so if you're following up with them, that's okay, but don't feel offended if they don't necessarily follow up with you. I think that's a piece that I've sort of learned from engaging with Canadians myself, and also like people from all over the world. Does anyone from my team want to add to that piece? I know it's kind of a complex part of Canadian culture.
I was saying in my group that there's a big stereotype that Canadians are kind, which is true to a degree, but expanding on that, I think it's more like they're polite, or like the distinction of polite is things that are like holding open a door, saying thank you or sorry, where it's kind of like what you mentioned is superficial.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's still a good act, but it's not like, I think Canadians are more likely to show that true deep kindness than anywhere else. I think there's kind people all over the world.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think that's a really good point, Isaac. I think that there's definitely like, there is that politeness that sort of like covers all Canadians, but then just like so many other places, like you're gonna have varying levels of kind within people as you engage with them. So for sure.
May I ask a question, Cecilia?
Yeah, definitely.
You said that most of the Canadians are friendly, and I wanted to know that if we want to be friends with someone, and because they are usually friendly, how we can understand that they like to communicate with us or no?
Yeah, so like my understanding of your question is that you're wanting to know, like, how do you know if like a Canadian is is just being like superficial, or if they really do mean what they're saying? Is that what you're asking?
Yeah, I mean, if I want to be friend with someone, and because, for example, she is friendly with all the people, how can I understand that also she would like to be friends with me, or she or he?
That's a really great question. I think a part of it is feeling okay to follow up and maybe ask them if they want to go for coffee, or in the case where you're not necessarily meeting up in person, maybe, hey, I really want to get to know you more. And if the person is okay to do that, they'll let you know. But I think one thing that's sort of important to remember is that in my experience, not all Canadians are very good at following up with that. So even though they like somebody, they're not as good at follow up with like wanting to reach out. I think that's a piece that's like hard for a lot of Canadians to do, is they don't really like reach out. So if you're interested in like meeting somebody or getting to know someone more, I think just reaching out and like letting them know, hey, like I really would like to go for coffee, or I would like to meet you on Zoom. Can we connect? And if they are sort of like repeatedly saying, oh no, I'm sorry, then that is a possibility that they maybe were just being polite. But I think in most cases, Canadians they try to be genuine. So I think if you're asking and they say like yes, that they want to meet up, then that's a really good indication that they weren't just being superficial friendly. They were wanting to connect. But I think the key is just to not feel hurt or offended by that piece.
Yeah, thank you. It was very helpful.
Yeah. No worries.
May I have one question?
Yeah.
Yes. What would you say about the level of trust in Canadian society? Because that's one thing I've observed when it comes to renting an apartment. So I've been in Finland and Europe for years, and I think that I observed that even with my experience, when we need to rent an apartment, as long as we like the room, As long as someone is going to contact you, you just ask or invite him or her to visit your place. But it seems that in Canadian context, the thing is totally different. It seems that all the cases going to require recommendation or references, and it is the renting apartment is much more difficult. So, what would you say about again level of trust in Canada? Thank you.
That's a really great question. Does anyone from my team want to comment on that first? I can also.
Sorry to make you silent for a while.
No, that's okay. Sorry,
Yeah,
Dana, I wasn't sure if you were trying to speak or not.
Yeah, it's up to you. Yeah, for renting places though, there's definitely a variety of issues that come up.
Yeah.
Just even from when you're looking up places, a lot of them aren't real as well. So a lot of the postings that we have in Victoria are scams. So there's that way for a level of trust. If you're renting a room, you can usually just meet up with the roommates. And if you like them, then usually it's fine. And you don't necessarily need to sign a lease or have references or anything. But I think if it's you being the one to be directly responsible for an apartment, then there's that next level of like they might want to check references or do a credit check and just kind of to cover that much. So I think it just depends on which level you're looking at. Yeah, I don't know. You have more input, Cecilia?
Yeah, well, I think something that I just wanted to comment on is that I think particularly in Victoria, what I've noticed is that there is because it's generally like a university town, there's a lot of students that are renting. Sometimes landlords are a little bit more strict. They want to make sure that that they have all sort of like their ducks in a row to make sure that the person that's going to be renting is going to be following up. And maybe that comes from a place of students maybe not always being able to pay rent or not being able to follow up in quite the same way. So maybe that's sort of something that's developed within the university town. I would say, I think you are onto something though relating to trust. I think that although Canadians are pretty friendly towards each other, there is sort of an element of not full distrust, but I would say an element of not wanting to be taken advantage of or not wanting to sort of have something go wrong. So I think maybe that's what you're starting to sort of pick up in the rental market. Yeah, it's a really good question. I haven't actually been asked that before in this kind of context of Canadian culture. So that's a really interesting thing that you've started to notice.
Yeah, I had never put those two together as well, but it makes sense.
Yeah.
I'll just add, I just saw a couple of comments in the chat about housing in Canada and how to find housing. Definitely we can add in some links about finding credible off-campus housing. You can also contact our International Student Services office. We can add in the main link, add in our email contact there about off-campus housing options. But definitely I would recommend to not commit to anything before you've seen it. At least that's just personal experience. I think you just don't know what a place can look like. You don't know who the people are, and really better to first come here and see the place for yourself before signing or committing anything to anything before you arrive would be my recommendation. And yeah, I think it is true as well. In some cases, like Dana, I think was saying that if it's a place you're looking for yourself, they may ask for references, and that's just something that has become sort of commonplace or sort of a standard practice. So some other options, like Dana had said, is you could just first find roommates, and that might be a bit of an easier route to go. You could also look, I don't know the current situation right now with that, but I know in pre-COVID times there was homestay options. So it might be best to first live in a homestay until you kind of come here and met some more people. And then at that point, you probably would be able to have a reference or two at that point. So those are just some suggestions off the top of my head at this point.
And I have put into the chat here a link to the International Student Services website that has some explanation about both housing and finances to look at, as well as further up into the chat, I have put the ISS info at uvic.ca. So any of these types of questions about like finding housing or what that process looks like, if you can't find information on the actual website, please feel free to email that ISS info at uvic.ca and they can help you in more detail.
Thanks, Cecilia.
Yeah.
I would say that I do have, before we do move on to other questions, with regard to the quiz, I'm still waiting the answers for one of the groups, but I don't see many of the group members in there. So I don't know if we want to just kind of give the results out so that people, if they do have any more questions, we can kind of do it after that. Does that sound good?
That sounds
great. Yeah.
Okay, awesome. So, so there was a two-way tie for first place, but there was one group who answered before the next, so therefore we do have a winner. It seemed most people got most of the questions right, but a lot of you, for some reason, none of the teams got with what city is known for its brunch options. It's Victoria. Just as a heads up to all of you guys that are here. So yes, when you do come here, you can, you know, come here for brunch. There's a lot of options. And other than that, I feel like people did not know what is the third most commonly spoken language in Canada, which is actually Mandarin. Woo!
What were some of the guesses, Swap?
Pretty much every other team guessed, the people who wrote answers for that, Punjabi, which I guess would kind of be close, but I guess Mandarin's there. And okay, so kind of going in third place, we have Breakout Room 3, Belgium Prize. Woo! Great job, guys. And second place with 8 correct answers, unfortunately just a little too late, was Team Maple. Yay. And that brings us to our winner, which was Breakout Room 1, and their team name was Breakout Room 1, so congratulations, guys.
That's awesome. Congratulations.
Okay. Well done. Love the team names.
So for those of you that were in that breakout room and won, so the breakout room 1, I guess, you can email gcmentor@uvic.ca, and I'm going to put that into the chat here, and let us know that you were on the winning team for Canadian Trivia, and we will give you instructions about getting your prize. Good job.
Okay. Well done.
Good job, guys.
So you can also feel free to keep asking questions if you'd like. But if you have somewhere to go, you can do that now as well. Just make sure that you send your email and everything so you can get your prizes first. Do you have anything to add, Cecilia?
I don't think I have anything to add at this point, but if there are other questions, I think it would be great we can stay on the line and answer questions for you.